Yeah, thank you so much. Joining me now is Congressman Rob Woodall from Georgia's 7th Congressional District. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm happy to be here, Megan.
So we are going to get to the budget in a second. I want to talk to you first about what the story that is definitely driving the Capitol Hill press corps, and that is Nancy Pelosi's comments about impeachment. Are you reassured that she has said, you know what, it's not a priority for us at this time?
It is driving the Capitol Hill press corps. I would tell you it's not particularly driving the Republican conference. You can only impeach a president for high crimes and misdemeanors, and that's not applicable in this case. But it is good to know that with her caucus never having been more liberal, that even when they want to make political hay out of something as serious as impeachment, that the leadership from the very top, and Nancy Pelosi says this is just a terrible waste of time. From Maryland, our majority leader, and Steny Hoyer, says, listen, this is going to be a terrible distraction. We really like to be focused on the American people's priorities. Consider me one of those members. Let's focus on the American people's priorities. And those are those breadbasket issues that we're talking about each and every day.
So that leads us right directly into the budget, right? So we have this new budget from President Trump. There's some additional spending, asking for $8.6 billion on a border wall, spending for the military, $750 billion, but then a lot of cuts, a lot of domestic spending cuts. Larry Kudlow called it a tough budget. What was your initial response when you read it?
Well, the only way to produce a serious budget is for it to be a tough budget. Remember, I've served for 6 years with President Obama in the White House. He never sent a balanced budget to Capitol Hill. I don't mean one that balanced in 10 years. I mean not in 20 years, not in 50 years, not in 100 years. The president has said if we're going to get serious about the next generation's prosperity, we've got to offer a budget that balances, and this one does in the 15-year window. But you can't do that without prioritizing some serious questions. He fully funds veterans' health care, for example, because of course that's where we are as Americans. But he reduces what we're reimbursing for prescription drugs and says, isn't that a common value, that we want to lower prescription drug prices for all Americans? So just because it's a reduction in spending doesn't mean you're going to see pain. It might mean we're eliminating some waste, fraud, and abuse, changing some programs in ways that are going to serve all Americans better.
So when you talk about lowering prescription drug costs, does that mean that this budget is then aspirational? Is it going to go along with other legislative priorities for Republicans, for Democrats, bipartisanly? Is it aspirational in thinking that things may get better down the line?
Yeah, that's a good point. Of all the budgets that presidents send to Capitol Hill, absolutely none of them have ever become the law of the land. They are all aspirational documents in that way. And we're looking to the White House for leadership on things like prescription drugs. But what it does do is say that we've got a willing partner in the White House to make some tough decisions. Spending for this budget goes up each and every year. When we talk about cuts, we're not talking about reducing spending, we're talking about reducing the rate of growth of spending. We're raising more tax revenue today than ever before in American history, and we're going to keep raising more each and every year throughout the entire budget window. Our budget challenges aren't that we're not taxing enough, it's that we're spending too much. And the only way to get a handle on that is one line item at a time, and that's what you see in literally hundreds of pages of the president's budget.
So with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was the signature legislation for Republicans in the last Congress, that did add a lot of money to the deficit. That has greatly stretched the deficit into a $1 trillion deficit. And we're looking at that down the line for 5 additional years under this budget proposal from the president. So how do you square those two things? Well,
I guess I reject that characterization. Again, revenues have never been higher in the history of the republic. Revenues have gone up and will go up each and every year. So if the definition of adding to the deficit is that we let American families keep more of their money, and the right way to solve the deficit is to take everything from everybody, I don't think that's the right approach. That Tax Cut and Jobs Act has resulted in more jobs than we have people looking for jobs. It's resulted in the highest levels of employment in our African American communities, in our Hispanic American communities. It's resulted in the lowest unemployment rates in my lifetime. Those are things that we ought to, in a bipartisan way, be celebrating. Also in a bipartisan way, we should be talking about how to extend the life of Medicare, how to protect Medicaid expenditures from fraud and abuse, how to serve our veterans in ways where we're not wasting money, but making sure every dollar is going to a veteran in need. That's what you see in these pages today. There's a lot of bipartisan material in here that I hope we'll be able to work together on.
So President Trump is a Republican, you're a Republican, but Republicans are in the minority here where we stand in the House of Representatives. So do you anticipate a pretty hard fight moving forward, trying to get a budget to move between this divided Congress?
Well, the saddest thing I've heard in my first 60 days of this congressional calendar has been that the Democrats might not even try to move a budget.
Well, I will tell you, Vice Chair Catherine Clark said today that they will be moving a budget forward.
In the Budget Committee, that's true. We've got great leadership. John Yarmouth, Democrat from Kentucky, leads that for the other side of the aisle. Steve Womack from Arkansas leads that on our side of the aisle. They are a great partnership, and we are going to produce that on the Budget Committee on which I sit. Question is, will the House consider that budget? My great hope is that we will. Is it going to be easy to get Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and President Trump all on the same page? No, that's always a challenge. But there's nothing that needs to be done to set priorities for the American people that's easy. Budgeting is hard, and going through that hard exercise is what I believe each and every one of my constituents pays me to do.
So if we're looking at how we're going to create bipartisan cooperation in a budget, where are the areas that you see bipartisan cooperation sitting on the Budget Committee with your Democratic colleagues across the aisle?
I'll give you an example from President Obama's budget. He proposed chained CPI. It's a better way of measuring inflationary growth in budget priorities. Instead of partnering with him to make that the law of the land, we began to poke him with a sharp stick to say that's not a good idea, you should have done it differently. We should have taken yes for an answer. Lots of ideas in this budget that Democrats should take yes for an answer. For example, President in fully funding the Veterans Health Care Program as the VA Missions Act just passed last Congress demanded. That's a lot of money. It's over $80 billion that's dedicated here, but it's worth it. It's a shared priority. Folks ought to say yes there. The eradication of AIDS, one of President Trump's priorities from the State of the Union, funded here. Let's take yes for an answer on that and lean in. What we're doing at NIH, what we're doing in cancer research, what we're doing in opioids, more money than ever before for opioid treatment and interdiction. Those are problems in small town America and big city America. So lots of things in here that Democrats can say yes to, including the lowering of prescription drug prices.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Congressman Rob Woodall. Going to toss it back to you guys in New York.
All right, great stuff. Megan Pratt.